Hey guys, so in this video we'll try to explore what is Azure CLI, Azure Command Line Interface. So let's get started then. So basically Azure CLI is a cross-platform command line interface for managing Azure resources. So it actually works on a lot of platforms like Windows, Mac, Linux. So basically I always, or most of my time was working on Windows and then secondary is Linux. It is because due to the .NET, I still need to um, do some maintenance on the legacy stuff. But on the side, I do switch between Microsoft and Windows. And now, of course, if you have that kind of tool, so the question is, how are we going to manage the resources? And of course, managing those resources, of course, we could create a new one. And of course, when we have created a new one, we could also query existing resources. An example is if we were to search for a certain resource like a account, so we could query those resources that will return the result as a JSON. And then of course, let's say updating existing resources. Let's say you have an Azure App Service, and if you want to change some configuration settings, and then of course delete resources. So for example, you just created a virtual machine for you to test something that pops out in your mind and you want to test immediately. So after you have tested either a failure or a success, you could delete the resources, which is this case, virtual machine. And of course, options for managing Azure resources. So there are a couple of tools actually. So the first one will always be the Azure portal, which is quite good, but in my experience, sometimes it's error prone. Try to imagine that you have already deployed something and then you created a same name that was already deployed, so it could give you, some issues along the way. And then Azure CLI, which you could, automate a lot of things. And of course, as we all know, it is cross-platform. It can run on different multi-platforms. And then, if you're a Windows guy and familiar with PowerShell, so you could also use PowerShell. And I know PowerShell also runs on Linux, so yeah. And then, of course, if you're pretty much okay with the SDK in using, let's say, C Sharp, so you could manage the Azure resources on that end. So that's pretty much it, I think. So thank you, cheers, and bye bye.